You're a hero to me. I know you're a hero to many people in the clean tech space.
And hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today is January 26th. I'm Eric Planey.
I'm Lucas Finko.
And today, our special guest is none other than FERC Commissioner Neil Chatterjee. And together, the three of us are the Pirates of Clean Tech.
Yar.
Yar.
You did the yar.
I did the yar.
There's Neil.
People just get pulled into the yar, so you're one of us. Neil.
I went with it.
Well, I'm going to turn
Peer
it over
pressure.
to Lucas. And Lucas, why don't you do an introduction of our special guest for today?
Yeah, Neil, thank you so much for coming on our show. It's a real pleasure to have you here. We're huge fans of FERC. We've been following some of the FERC movements over the last couple of years. There's been some interesting develops and some confusion. So maybe we can talk about some of those. That'd be great today. So I'm just going to jump right into it. And I'm hoping you can help us with a little bit of background on your career for some of our younger listeners. You know, how did you get to be a FERC chairman? How does that journey go?
Yeah, great question. My two loves in life are really sports and politics. And my athletic career stalled out in the 8th grade when I stopped growing. And so I thought the next best thing I could do was to go to Washington and pursue a career in public policy. In all seriousness, I was into politics as a kid because my dad was into politics. And it was kind of the one area where when he and I talked about politics, he treated me differently. He treated me like an adult. So I've just always had an interest in it. Went to college, graduated, went to law school. I actually did a program where I did 2 years of law school, a year of business school, and then came back and finished my last year of law school. I was in business school on September 11th, 2001. And in that moment, really decided I wanted to do something to contribute to my country, to give back to my country. My best friend from business school, he was just in the business program, not the law school program. He got a job in D.C. with then Congressman, now U.S. Senator Rob Portman of Ohio, who represented the Cincinnati area. I went to law school at the University of Cincinnati College of Law. And he got a job with Congressman Portman. I finished up law school. I got married that summer. My father-in-law thought his daughter had married this young and up-and-coming attorney who was finally going to take her off his payroll. And we said, I went to my friend. I said, hey, how do I get a job in D.C.? How do I work up here? He said, Neil, no one here cares that you're a lawyer, that you went to business school. You have no experience. The best we can do is offer you an internship. Congressman Portman is on this committee, the House Ways and Means Committee. It's a very influential committee. We can get you an internship. So I left a potential well-paying job in Cincinnati, Ohio, and my $400 a month apartment in Northern Kentucky. My wife and I moved to Washington, D.C. I was paid a stipend of $1,400 a month to intern with the House Committee on Ways and Means. Our rent was $1,650. So my wife is the real MVP of this story. She kind of worked to pay the bills while I worked my way up through government service. Ultimately wound up with an opportunity to work for my home state senator, who at the time was serving as the Senate Minority Leader, Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky. And how it ties to FERC is actually really interesting. FERC is an independent bipartisan agency that can never have any more than 3 members from one political party. So the deal that was struck by Senators Dole and Daschle when they ran the Senate was that the party leader of the party that does not control the White House will pick that party's candidates for bipartisan boards and commissions. So during the 8 years that President Obama was in office, Senator McConnell picked folks for boards like the FERC, FCC, SEC, and the like. So as Senator McConnell's energy policy advisor, I was responsible for identifying and selecting nominees to FERC. And no, I did not Dick Cheney myself and put myself into the seat. There was someone else I had in mind for it. They ultimately didn't want to do it. That person recommended that I should do it, and that's how it all came about. But it's been a fabulous experience. Senator McConnell was wonderful and championed my nomination, and I got through the Senate, and I've been here for going on 4 years now. My term ends at the end of June, and I intend to stay. I intend to be productive and to build on the good work that we have done, particularly in the clean tech space, for the remainder of my tenure.
Well, I
Awesome.
have to interrupt for 1 second before Lucas gets into it, because I told you before we taped, I grew up in Youngstown, Ohio. In 2009, I went back, I left Wall Street, I went back to Youngstown to work at the Chamber of Commerce in Youngstown. And two of the best experiences I had there were getting to know Senator Sherrod Brown and Senator Rob Portman. And after Senator Portman announced yesterday that he will no longer be seeking re-election in 2022, I found a video online by the Ohio Oil and Gas Association of me introducing Senator Portman at a job fair we hosted for the shale gas industry. And there's so many countless times where Rob was so good to Northeast Ohio, which is really a Democrat area. But him and Sherrod Brown really put partisanship aside when it comes to doing what's best for Ohioans. And I really have respected him. I stay in touch with his staff. I have some good friends of his that are on staff currently and also in other parts of DC. So the fact that you have a connection with Rob, just says a ton about you, because I just think he's such a stand-up person and, really inspired people, I think, to go to the next level.
Well, thank you for saying that. He's obviously been a very important person to me in my career, not just professionally, but personally as well. We actually got a lot of things done together during my time in the Senate. I was with him on 2 separate occasions at 4 a.m. on the Senate floor. They say that the only way you get things done in the United States Senate is 2 ways: through unanimous consent or exhaustion. And he was a master of this. And the Shaheen-Portman energy efficiency bill, he multiple times worked it through, and he made us grind until everyone was exhausted, and he got it in at 4 a.m. He's really a real legislator and a master technician. And I was actually really disappointed and sad yesterday. I think it's a loss for America. I know that not everyone agrees with every decision he ever made, but he's a true, earnest statesman and a regulator. And his signal that he's no longer willing to serve is just a blow to America. I would have mentioned it in my opening remarks talking about my background, but I was trying to be podcast timely. I'm not sure when you're airing this, and I didn't want to be like, oh, you retired yesterday if you were airing it like 2 weeks from now. So
No,
I'm glad we covered it.
We post it. We don't edit. We just post it.
Yeah, it should be out tomorrow morning.
All right. Okay, great.
All right, Lucas, back to you.
Oh, so that was a great story, and I love people to hear that. Oftentimes, to get to, have a great career, you have to make sacrifices. Sometimes you have to go through challenges, and that's part of the reason why you get there. But you also mentioned clean tech, so we're going to go to that right away. So let's talk about 2050, Neil. Like, how do we get there? How's this transition going to happen? How is FERC playing a role? How are markets playing a role? Can you give us your vision for that?
Yeah, no, I think, look, what FERC has done in this space is something that I'm probably most proud of during my tenure at the commission. I think I point to 2 orders in particular. FERC Order 841, which removed barriers to entry for battery storage resources to enable them to be compensated for all of their attributes for capacity, for energy, for ancillary services. Was really a groundbreaking rulemaking by the commission. At the time we moved on it, it wasn't necessarily universally accepted. It was challenged in the courts, went all the way to the DC Circuit. We ultimately prevailed. And that victory laid the groundwork for what I truly think is the most significant action this commission has ever taken. And that's FERC Order 2222, which removed barriers to entry for aggregated distributed energy resources. Just to take a step back and think about what this could mean, I think the best example for me, electric vehicles. you're an electric vehicle owner. You yourself as an individual can't possibly influence the markets. Suddenly, though, if through the power of technology and innovation, we are able to harness the power of myriad electric vehicles through aggregation technologies, and you're able to compete with the power plant down the street, now you've got a consumer-focused, market-driven, competitive way to accelerate the deployment of clean energy technology that will not only lead to further reductions in carbon emissions in the power sector, but I really think it's not hyperbolic to contemplate that this power market reform could actually lead, if it leads to the increased deployment of electric vehicles or accelerated deployment of electric vehicles, to reductions in emissions in the transportation sector as well. I sincerely hope that when we get to 2050, my grandchildren will be able to look back and say their grandfather played a part in the aughts and or whatever they call this last decade, the tens leading into the 2020, in putting forward these landmark reforms that got us to the clean energy grid and system of the future and made a real meaningful contribution to combating global climate change, which I do believe is the existential threat of our time.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. I just wanted to go and grab the third rail a bit here and talk about Mopar because it's still not settled, right? And I've stated on the show, my opinion is, we have all these renewables that are coming in, bidding zero in the energy markets. If we get high renewable penetration, this market's going to break, right? We got to have some kind of a fix for this. So we can't imagine the problem's just going to go away. You want to talk about that at all?
Yeah. So look, these are really complicated. The market issues are complicated. I think that I have taken the approach that I am a big believer in markets and the effectiveness of markets. And I think the evidence bears out. If you look at the US power market, cap and trade legislation didn't move forward. We've never been able to enact a carbon tax at the federal level. The Obama era Clean Power Plan was stayed by the courts. President Trump removed the United States from the Paris Climate Accords. President Trump said that windmills cause cancer. In the face of all of that, power sector emissions have continued to decline. And that's due to, in my view, market forces. There's no question that at their infancy, at the onset, the growth in renewables and the deployment of renewables was driven by subsidies and mandates and regulations. I think that's no longer the case. I think there is a genuine business case to be made for clean energy. I think consumers are demanding it across the board, from mom and pop businesses to individual families to Fortune 50 companies. They want cleaner forms of energy. And that cleaner form of energy is by the day becoming more and more affordable. And I think that business case will just lead to continued market-driven growth in that area. And I have simply taken the approach that I want maximally efficient markets that send accurate price signals. And if there are certain out-of-market policies that are distorting those price signals, in the long term, I think that's detrimental to markets. And I would prefer a market structure that allows resources to compete on even footing, because my belief is that over the course of time, particularly when we get that breakthrough in storage technology, which I think we are on the precipice of, but we have not pocketed yet, in my view, solar co-located with storage totally changes the game when we get to that point. Yeah. And I think it's the market which drives innovation, which drives cost discipline, that will get us to that truly earth-saving, game-changing, earth-shattering place.
Earth-saving, yeah. I think you make a good point. I mean, all you need is like a firming requirement, right? And then the market, let the market do the rest. You know, I've thought about even carving out renewables from the markets just because this doesn't work. But
Look, markets aren't simple. I mean,
Yeah.
anytime you're talking about layering algorithm on top of algorithm on top of algorithm, you know, these are complex things to unsort. It's a little unfortunate that some of the dynamics and conversation around markets have become politicized. I wish it weren't politicized. I wish we would just take a step back and let the engineers and the economists sort it out. I think they'll be able to get us to a clean energy future in a way that doesn't sacrifice reliability, that maintains affordability. I, for one, am very bullish about the role that markets have played and will continue to play in driving the energy transition.
Neil, just kind of based on what you said, do you see this like road to perfect market transparency and pricing correlating almost perfectly with the cost of implementing clean energy to the point where it is totally market driven, not necessarily subsidized? Do you see the convergence taking place exactly at the right level on both sides of that equation? Or do you think that there still needs to be some sort of government incentive to get us over the hump and get clean energy installed in mass so we hit our 2050 targets?
I think the government action, and we're seeing calls for it now, and I think individual participants are calling for it, is, in my view, as someone who has seen firsthand the success of markets in the US, I'd like to see greater market participation. You're seeing an effort now in the Southeast to move towards a potential market structure there. Look, I'm from Kentucky. I'm old enough to remember that there are utilities in Kentucky who were market participants who got out because it was an unfavorable outcome for them. The fact that they are reevaluating that is a very positive sign to me, and devil will be in the details, but we'll see what they come forward with. I've had conversations with folks in the West, whether it ranges from CAISO expansion to regions where there's been some resistance to markets. They're looking to see what we're doing in terms of carbon pricing. As you all know, I was famously demoted by the president for my role as chairman of FERC for advocating for and authoring a draft policy statement on carbon pricing, which would provide kind of a roadmap to how FERC could consider a state-imposed price on carbon within our markets and within our jurisdiction. I've heard from stakeholders say, let's see how this goes. If a proposal comes forward to the commission and hypothetically you all approve it and determine it's just and reasonable, and we see some success, maybe in an Eastern RTO on this, that could be the impetus to both market expansion and examining whether, in fact, pricing the externality might be the most effective, efficient way, the most effective market-driven solution to mitigating carbon. So I know that's not, Eric, the perfect way of answering your question, but your question is a little bit of a futuristic one. So rather than speculating on something that I'm uncertain of what can happen, I thought I would couch my answer in, here's what's out there. Here's what quite plausibly could happen in the short-term future. And I, for one, not prejudging the outcome of something that could come before me at the commission, am pretty excited about where the markets might take us in the clean energy transition.
I think you answered it when you talked about Kentucky and the fact that they're reevaluating what they've gotten out of several years ago. I think that tells the whole story right there. And the follow-up question is, Cindy McCain said she was going to have T-shirts made talking about the fact that she was censured by the Arizona GOP. Have you made any T-shirts yet after your famous demotion? And if we buy an electric vehicle, does someone get a free T-shirt that praises it?
No. Look, it's not. I don't want to get into all that. At the end of the day, look, it never feels good to be demoted from a position. But in this particular instance, I actually did take some measure of pride and wore it as a badge of honor, in that I do think it validated my integrity and my independence. And that's really important to me. not just for stakeholders of the commission, for my kids, for my friends, to know that I was in this really significant position at a very volatile time under tremendous political pressure. And I did what I thought was right and was independent. And I might not have always made the right decision every time. I'm self-aware enough to know I make mistakes daily, hourly, probably 12 on this podcast already. But I feel that I'll be able to hold my head up high at the end of the day and say that I genuinely tried to do what I thought was in the public interest. And if someone else wants to make that T-shirt, maybe I'll buy it.
Hey, Barnett can do it. If Barnett can do it, you can do it, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
He printed up, I guess, the image of him at the inauguration, I guess, and sold them and donated the money. So good for him. Well, a lot to unpack there, Neil. Wow. So if there was any doubt about the demotion, you just cleared that up. So that's interesting. And I want to dig on this carbon thing a little more too, because I find it very interesting. I did listen in on your tech conference, which was excellent. I was very impressed by the people you had on and their level of knowledge. So is this FERC's job? I mean, FERC is not legally required to regulate carbon, right? EPA is.
That's a great question. And that's one of the things that we did and we spelled out in the proposed policy statement. So FERC has very significant powers under section 206. We made clear that we did not, in the draft policy statement, that we did not believe that FERC had the authority under section 206 to impose a carbon price on the various RTOs and ISOs. But based on the record that was established at the technical conference and a wide array of testimony and input we got, both directly at the tech conference and in the subsequent filing of comments after the tech conference, there seemed to be a consensus that FERC did have the authority under section 205 in the event that a state brought forward a price on carbon, that we could accommodate that within our jurisdiction. So that is a really key distinction. We were not saying that FERC would impose a carbon price. We're not even saying that FERC would approve a carbon price. We are simply saying that we believe the commission has the authority, should someone come to the commission, to accommodate that price on carbon within our markets. And really the value of a FERC policy statement is to provide a roadmap to stakeholders so they have a sense of the commission's thinking, so they can come to the commission with the most legally precise filing. And that's really what I had hoped to get out of that process, to send a signal that such an effort would not be a dead letter on our door, and to kind of lay out some parameters that, if followed, we thought could potentially lead to a just and reasonable filing.
Well, because, and you brought up the Northeast already has a credits trading market, right, Reggie? Which I haven't been a huge fan of, because it's, in my opinion, it's very hard to get the supply right? If you have too much supply, it's zero. And if you don't have enough, people complain they can't operate because they can't buy credits. So it's like you can't win in kind of a fixed market, right? So I don't know, but you would rather have just a price than a market?
In my view, the two key market design challenges that we faced during my tenure at the commission, kind of pushing back on out-of-market subsidies and pushing towards what I think is a cleaner outcome and pricing the externality. Given the choice of subsidies which distort market signals, or a price on the externality, which is a clean and direct market signal, I clearly favor a price, as do most economists across the political spectrum, including many conservative economists.
Well, but how are you going to set the price? I guess is my question. Are you going to
We
set
would
it
not.
by fiat or?
That's a huge. That's huge. That's a very important question.
Yeah.
We made very clear. FERC does not have the expertise or the resources to set the price. I want to be very, very clear about that. Nothing in our approach says that A, that FERC will unilaterally impose this price, or B, that FERC will set the price. If there is a stakeholder process that results in a price that is determined by said stakeholders and that is brought to the commission, we will then evaluate that policy on its merits. We are simply signaling that we have the authority to do this. We are not saying we would approve it. We are not saying we would reject it.
Okay.
We are not saying this is the price you need to hit or that is the price you need to hit. We're simply saying if you through your stakeholder process come to us with a price on carbon at wherever point you set it, we have the authority and the jurisdiction to evaluate it and make a determination on its just and reasonableness.
Okay.
Wow.
Something.
I'm absorbing all that right now. So it sounds like 205 is almost a catalyst for you to allow the price setting to take place, and in certain markets, like other states, will follow along, and they feel comfortable doing so, even though another state has set the price in the market. Am I saying that correctly?
No, and I want to be very clear on this because
Sure.
FERC talk is complicated. Under Section 206, the Commission directs the RTOs and the ISOs and uses its pretty powerful, authorities to drive an outcome. Under 205, it bubbles up. It has to come up through the process at the stakeholder level. And then we make a determination at that point whether it's just and reasonable, and it's isolated to whatever region brings us the proposal. And so if RTO X comes to us with a proposal and the commission hypothetically determines it is just and reasonable, that may inform RTO Y's proposal, but certainly would not, directly influence it. Look, there's no one size fits all approach to this, at least from the role that FERC can play. What I'm laying out here is kind of a region by region, RTO, ISO by RTO, ISO approach. And some people have poo-pooed that. Some people have said, hey, look, if we're going to do this, the only way to do this is a economy-wide, federally imposed price on carbon. To which my counter to that is like, hey, look, we've been talking about this for more than a decade and a half now. As I mentioned, consensus amongst economists, including conservative economists, that if you believe climate change is real and man-made, that this is the most effective, efficient way, most market-driven way to go about mitigating carbon emissions. Yet we've never even taken a baby step. So all I'm asking is, let's take the baby step and see what happens. And if it works, maybe that baby step leads to, broader application of the policy. But let's not avoid the baby step because it's not a universal, perfect silver bullet solution. That doesn't exist. I would rather actually do something than continue to talk about it and have.
Well, but Neil, I mean, that's kind of the point of federal regulation, right? Is to make things smooth over the states, right? So I almost feel like try this strategy. What you really want is two states, maybe in the same RTO, sending you different prices. So it's like a dispute between the states. And maybe that gives you extra leverage to say that now the Fed has to step in, right?
I think if we're going to have a federal policy, it's got to come from Congress. And to be honest, a lot of my frustration is that, we haven't had a real national energy policy out of Congress in 15 years. I was proud to have worked on the Energy Policy Act of 2005. Since that act, we had an energy bill in 2007, but really since then, most energy policy that has come out of Congress, I was there for a lot of it, got done either through the tax code or through omnibus appropriations bills. And so in the absence of that guidance from Congress, what has happened is states have taken it upon themselves to pursue policies that favor their goals and resources that have had an impact in multi-state markets.
Right.
Or a lot of these key decisions have fallen to agencies like FERC, who simply do not have the tools to address these complicated issues. So the scenario that you lay out of two conflicting state prices within an RTO, that is what we try to address in our proposed carbon policy statement. We tried to signal that states needed to account for leakage, for economic leakage, for carbon leakage. We tried to lay out a roadmap they could follow, but we made very clear that we were not dictating these kinds of decisions. We were not dictating the price. We were not even saying that they ought to do this. We were simply laying out the parameters that should a state move in this direction and a proposal bubble up to the commission, that we could consider it.
Okay.
No, thanks for clarifying a lot of that too. And thanks for clarifying the 205 part. When you said the indirect influence, I think that's what I was trying to get across, but your clarification helped get that over the hump. So I appreciate that. Let me switch gears a little bit. In our podcast history, which is going on 7 months now, one of the biggest topics that keeps coming up from everything we read is about green hydrogen and how green hydrogen is booming. And we're starting to see noise out there, articles out there talking about how hydrogen can be a part of natural gas power plant generation, or power generation from natural gas, by almost coming in as an additive that can, quote, green the natural gas process. What is FERC seeing in terms of either, states and regions looking at natural gas buildup and also green hydrogen? Like, is there any FERC stance on the growth of hydrogen fueling the transition to a greener economy?
Look, there's no doubt that this is a really interesting conversation, and it's definitely one that I am going to be watching closely. As I think about it, technically, renewable natural gas, green hydrogen, and pipelines, is that going to work? Can it be made to work? It definitely seems feasible. I know there's been work on trying it on a pilot basis in a number of places, such as the UK. Agencies like ours, PHMSA, we might be involved in working with industry at some point to develop gas quality and safety standards for blends. So I guess that would probably be the role we would play. I think hydrogen affects pipelines differently than natural gas. So getting those standards right will be key. I know the DOE labs have done some work on this. So it's definitely interesting. It also raises really interesting regulatory questions that I just think they're going to evolve depending on how the issue evolves. Renewable natural gas by itself will probably be viewed as natural gas. So that looks certain to be FERC jurisdictional. Renewable natural gas and hydrogen transported together, which is what some people are discussing, I think that's more of an open question. I don't know of any instance that FERC has ever spoken to it. I'll note that the Natural Gas Act does define natural gas to include any mixture of natural gas and artificial gas. But hydrogen by itself seems less naturally under our purview given existing statutes. So that's my long-winded senatorial way of saying there are existing hydrogen pipelines. They just haven't been FERC jurisdictional. My assumption is that PHMSA already has safety standards for these pipelines. And it's just something that those of us at the commission need to continue to watch and observe as this technology and the discourse around it evolves.
There's going to be a lot, I think, of conversations regarding new technologies and how to best manage and oversee it. So I agree with that. Lucas, one or two questions I think we have left for Neil.
Yeah, can I sneak in one last quick one here and then we can let you go? Am I going to see a sign, Neil, for Congress anytime soon? 2024, maybe? What do you think, Neil?
Look, that's a great question. I think right now my focus is on finishing my term, which runs at the end of June. To date, I have dedicated almost the entirety of my career to public service. And if I have my way, I would like to confidently say that this will not be my final time serving my country. I don't know if future service would be elected or appointed or voluntary or staff. But I do think and very much desire to serve my country again. When that will be, we'll have to see what the future holds. I will say, we talked about this earlier. It's sad to me and frustrating to me that someone like Senator Portman is stepping away because he felt like he couldn't get things done in Washington. I respect his approach. I have genuinely enjoyed my time here at the commission as well as in Congress. When I look back, I think we got a lot accomplished. And so should I ever step forward to serve my country again, I would need to feel hopeful and optimistic that there would be an opportunity to better the lives of Americans. And the state of affairs today is a sad one and a frustrating one. And I'm hopeful to do my part, whether in government or out of government, to try and bring the nation together and really move forward on these issues. And so that's my long-winded senatorial way of saying, look, I already talk like a senator. I can't shut up. Hopefully they don't do away with the filibuster for no other reason than a cloture petition is a beautiful thing because you can get people to shut up if you get 60 people to vote for it. But I love this country. I will do everything I can to serve the people. And when my term ends in June, I'll sit down with my family and figure out what to do next. But I do hope that public service is in my future at some point.
Well, I got to tell you, I was stalking you on Twitter a couple days ago. And when President Biden announced Rich Glick as the new chairman, you really said some really nice things. And that spirit of bipartisanship is becoming less and less transparent or visible in America. And that makes it sad. It makes it sad when you send a complimentary email on Twitter and it pops up and stands out to me as something unique. But it seems like the commission itself really has a spirit of cooperation and esprit de corps. And I think your record as a body over the last year or two really reflects that. You guys, with all the political upheaval going on, you were able to come out with some direction on very complicated issues. And I think you can't get there unless you are cooperating. So that was really nice to see.
Well, I appreciate it. I was very proud and happy for Rich. Obviously, we've worked together very closely the last several years. What I love about Rich is that, look, there are many issues that we disagreed on, but it was never personal. We were able to disagree without being disagreeable. I work very well, not just with him, but with his team. And we got a lot of great things together. As I look back at my record, one of the things I'm proudest of is I was in the majority on every vote. Some of those votes were with my Republican colleagues, with my Democratic colleagues dissenting. Some of them
Hmm.
were with my Democratic colleagues, with my Republican colleagues dissenting. And I'm actually quite proud of that. The overwhelming majority of our orders were unanimous. But in the instances where we had a partisan split, I was on both sides of that split on a number of really, really key issues to our energy future. And I'm proud of that. And I'm confident and optimistic that Rich and I are going to find ways to work together the next 6 months. I'm going to finish out my term because I want to be productive. I have far better things to do with my time. I've got 3 young kids. I'd rather be with them than sit here and obstruct what Chairman Glick's agenda is. If I'm going to stay, it's going to be to work and to advance the ball. And a lot of what he's going to move on are things that I already put in motion, from 2222 rehearing to looking what we can do in the transmission space, to the work that I started on hybrid resources, building off the technical conference we had on offshore wind integration, engaging on electric vehicles and what increased EV penetration will mean for the grid. These are all things that I was interested in and that Rich and I were already working on. We're just going to be doing them from different chairs, but we're going to continue to work together seamlessly. And I'm very much looking forward to it, and I'm excited about it.
Well, it's fantastic. Lucas, closing remark?
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Neil, for coming on. I know you're a hero to me. I know you're a hero to many people in the clean tech space. I really appreciate you talking about that and your principles and doing the right thing. And that is really a powerful message that speaks to me and a lot of our listeners and a lot of the people in the industry. And so it's meant a lot to us. So we just wanted to thank you from the industry. Thank you very much for your support and your integrity and your honesty. And thanks for coming on the show. It's been awesome.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. I'd love to do it again. I will definitely do better than a year-old Coors Light that's been here since March 11th the next time. So please have me back.
We would love that. Absolutely. Thank you again for everything.
Thank you.
And we're back. And during our little break period, we convinced Neil to stick around for our article session. I think there's going to be a throwdown between Lucas and Neil on his first article. We're going to give Neil a break because he is working off year-old Coors Light or Coors right now. So, that may impact his ability to answer quickly. I'm dealing with my last fat tire in the refrigerator, so I'm happy about that.
I'm also drinking fat tire. Look at that.
There you go.
Coincidence.
And actually, all 3 of them are Colorado beers, so a very progressive state when it comes to clean energy.
Well, I thought fat tire was the first one that was net zero brewer, right? Wasn't that fat tire?
They're out of Boulder, so that wouldn't surprise me.
Well, yeah. Okay.
All right, Lucas, you're going to
Ready?
go first because you've got the big article with a lot of content. So take it away.
Yeah. All right. So I found this great study. This is from this month. This is from Americans for a Clean Energy Grid. It doesn't appear to be an industry group. It looks like a lot of clean energy kind of nonprofits got together and formed this group so that they could work together. So really interesting. Go to their website if you want to learn more. But they put together this study, disconnected a need for a new generator interconnection policy. I didn't specifically pick this. It's very interesting to read just on its own, but with Neil here, it might be even more interesting. So I'll just skip to their key findings. So what they're finding is that when you want to build a big generation project, you have to file with the utility and with the ISO or what have you for an interconnection allowance. And they have to analyze your impact on the grid and make sure you're not going to cause problems on the grid. And then they give you, okay, you're good, or hey, you're not good, we have to make changes. And then they have this huge fight about who's going to pay for it, how much it costs. And it becomes a huge problem. So what happens is all these projects end up in a backlog. It's called the interconnection queue. And this queue is just growing and growing and growing. And it's mostly solar and wind projects. And so it's becoming an issue for clean energy deployment. And it looks like here at the end of 2019, 734 gigawatts of proposed generation in that queue, 90% solar and wind. And people are getting very upset about this. And I know actually in New York, there's a large queue also because of the VDER proceeding They're trying to change how they're incentivizing solar and wind. And so everybody got in the queue, and then nobody wants to do anything until the dollars settle. So there's a lot of issues on this. So they're trying to bring this up, and they're saying, look, this process is broken. We've got to fix it. They point the finger at FERC. Here's FERC right here. That we need to change this interconnection policy. They call it dated. They call it outdated. What do they call it? Archaic process. And the other thing that's odd too is they talk about this, beneficiary pays principle from FERC. Maybe Neil can explain that. But currently they're saying, look, you want this giant solar plant. We can't accommodate it. We got to run a new transmission line. You have to pay. And this always seemed really odd to me. Like, I thought that's what I pay for in my utility bill. I pay for capital costs in my utility bill. So why am I paying for it in my bill? And then I also pay for it when I want to connect. So I've always thought that was kind of weird. I don't know if Neil's ready. I don't know, Neil, you got an opinion on this? What do you think?
There's obviously a lot to unpack there. I'm familiar with the study. I haven't really briefed it in detail. Obviously, challenges around the queue and queue reform are something that, we've had a lot of discussion here about at the commission. I think at the end of the day, states really are the lead players when it comes to transmission siting. In the absence of, that's what makes it challenging for developers to build transmission across state lines, to get through these questions about siting authority and cost allocation. What we really need at the end of the day is, I think, expanded federal siting authority. At FERC, we oversee transmission planning processes, and we approve transmission cost allocation and rates. So our policies have a huge role to play. But in terms of some of these issues that are being raised by this particular study, I believe, without having the benefit of being fully briefed on the study, I think it may take Congress to step in here.
Yeah, and actually they do have recommendations, and they actually talk in the study about how piecemeal fixes aren't going to work. We need something big. And then in my opinion, they don't go big enough. They don't say, hey, we maybe we have to rework this whole thing. Maybe we need a larger, fully integrated planning process. They don't go that far, which is what I think they should have done. Instead, they go a little bigger than the piecemeal we have now. So it's like, I don't know. They should have done a better job on the recommendations, I think.
I'll admit, I only read the executive summary. I didn't go through the whole thing. It's thought-provoking is what I thought about this particular study. It's getting the conversation going. I look at it as good stress right now. We have a lot of clean projects that are hitting, are having groundbreakings, shovels and bulldozers are being put to work. So we obviously have to get through the logjam, and we will. So I look at this as a net positive in terms of what the study should be doing to generate conversation about whether a solution should be piecemeal or a wholesale change in the way we evaluate and we cite. So we got a lot of conversation. Neil talked about it in the first half of our broadcast, that there's just a lot that has to be tackled, and we're going to get there.
Yeah, let me see if I can find it. I mean, some of these graphs of the backlog are just really, really depressing. Here's one for the MISO. Let me zoom in on this. This is figure 2, training interconnection upgrade costs in MISO. I mean, look at the projects entering the queue in gray, and the projects getting approved through the queue in green. I mean, this can't continue. Look at this. This is crazy. Just crazy. 4.3 gigawatts in and 0.2 gigawatts out. This is 2017 in the West. I mean, that just can't continue forever.
Well, but I bet you as time goes on, it's going to come down. So we'll get through this.
So anyhow, it's a very interesting study. If this is your niche, you definitely want to go deep into this study. So here's another one, capacity in queues at year end. This goes to 2019. I mean, look at solar. Wow, just taking off, and it's all going in the queue. Look at storage too, starting to come up. That's very interesting. So, and coal is almost zero, so that makes me happy too.
There you go.
Yeah, really, this is crazy. So, yeah, it's gonna get to a breaking point, and then something's gonna have to be done. Yeah.
Agreed. It's a good study. It's definitely worth taking a look at. And cleanenergygrid.org is where you'll find it.
Yeah. All right, Eric, you want to go?
Yeah, and honestly, we can go through mine pretty quickly. Let's go to the Siemens one, if you don't mind. If we could start that one first.
Yeah.
So this is out of Clean Technia, July 19th, Steve Hanley. Really, we always follow Clean Technia. They have great stuff. Siemens Gamesa and Siemens Energy Green Hydrogen Initiative for Offshore Wind in the Middle East. This is a fantastic story for a lot of what we talked about today. We talked about offshore wind, we talked about green hydrogen, and we talked about taking technology to the next step. And what I absolutely loved about this particular story is we're talking about the fact that in the turbine itself, Siemens is working on a technology that can put the electrolyzer in the body of the offshore wind turbine itself so that you can actually move hydrogen right from the process of creating it on the turbine offshore and getting it right into either the grid for gas, into mobility, which could also include marine mobility, because hydrogen is being talked a lot about a marine propellant. And we're talking about getting into industrial plants. So here's a situation where we have a convergence of technologies. You've got a powerhouse technology company like Siemens working several angles of its different industry groups and coming up with something so incredibly unique that when there's downtime for not putting electricity into the grid for electricity, that turbine can be used to create hydrogen through an electrolyzer right on site. It's a great story. It's one of those ones we want to highlight technology development, and I just wanted to put this one out there and get your two's opinions on it. Neil,
Yeah, I think this is great. You want Neil to go?
Yeah, Neil, just in terms of technology development, it's this kind of stuff that's really going to move the needle on getting to our goals in 2050. And, I don't think there necessarily has to be a FERC opinion on a turbine that's also an electrolyzer, but I think just big picture concept about technology development, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, no doubt. Look, I'm not a futurist or an expert on this kind of stuff. So I'll simply speak at a macro level to, this is the kind of innovation that I think is exciting. And I'll tie it into what we were talking about earlier, is that tackling reducing carbon emissions and fighting climate change should not be something we disagree on. It should be something that we as humanity collectively come together on. And I think when you combine the desire to tackle the problem with innovation, you get projects like this that, again, just my quick skimming of this article, this is pretty exciting stuff. Again, I can't speak to its viability, not being an expert on it, but this is exactly the type of innovative thinking that I love to see and hope that will continue to flourish.
Yeah, and on top of that, and sorry to interrupt, Lucas, 99% of hydrogen developed in the world right now for industrial use is gray or blue hydrogen coming from coal or natural gas. It emits 830 million tons of CO2 a year, which is more than the entire nation of Germany or the entire global shipping industry. So these are statistics that we don't think about, but are paramount in order to get to our carbon reduction goals. Lucas?
Yeah, I mean, this concept kind of isn't new for me, but I love to point this out, that where it's the confluence of multiple challenges, multiple technologies that you can fit together to make it work, right? So somebody may say, oh, hydrogen doesn't work when I look at it by itself. But if you pair it as a firming resource for wind, if you pair it as a fuel source for marine transportation, for offshore, suddenly everything pulls together, right? So the more you get that confluence of ideas and concepts and put them together like a jigsaw puzzle, the more excitement I have about 2050 and how this is all going to work, right?
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
So interesting story, definitely worth looking at. Why don't we go to the SUV story, the NS article? All right, so this is from New Scientist, January 21st. People buying SUVs are canceling out climate gains from electric vehicles. This is a slightly disheartening story, but it's a reality we all know. People are buying more and more electric vehicles, which is great, but at this current moment, people are also buying much more SUVs, not only in North America, but also in Europe and Asia. They're larger vehicles with greater emissions. And so as a result right now, any benefit to the global environment from EVs is being canceled out by SUVs. And it's just, they give you some stats here that are pretty disheartening. This is more of a commentary that we need to take care of this. I lived in China last decade, and back in Shanghai, they used to actually tax, when you bought a new car, they tax the size of the engine. So they actually tax you on displacement. People in America don't like taxes for sure, but maybe in the interim period until EVs are fully utilized, maybe you start creating a tax credit for a person that buys a 4-cylinder SUV. Buick is launching a new SUV that's 225 horsepower. Okay, that was more than most V8s did 20 years ago. So I think people need to be incentivized, if you're not going to buy an electric vehicle, to at least buy a smaller displacement, better gas mileage SUV in order for us to start having net gains. We need to start thinking a little bit out of the box. The OEMs like selling SUVs right now because the profit margins are subsidizing the R&D into EV technology. And that's something they state publicly. So I can't say I fault the OEMs at this current moment. They need to spend money on R&D for EV. They need to get it from somewhere, but we need to incentivize the population to be as smart and energy efficient as possible right now.
I'll weigh in on that one a little bit.
Go for it.
As a proud driver of a Ford F-150, don't get mad at me. What I'll say here is I think that automakers need to take the same market-driven approach that I've advocated for on the power market side. Look, EVs at their onset, I think people rolled their eyes at them. Now, anyone who's been or seen a Tesla up close, Teslas are pretty powerful vehicles. And I think a lot of the concerns that folks had about them are immediately eradicated when you actually see the power of a Tesla up close. And when Teslas can get to scale and the cost comes down, I think there's going to be a lot of consumer interest in them. There's talk of going to EV pickup trucks, EV SUVs, design cars that American consumers will want. And I think ultimately, as we've seen with the demand for clean energy in the power sector, you're going to see that in the automotive sector. As people get more confidence around their batteries, around the amount of distance they can travel, that there's adequate infrastructure in place, that will help alleviate, some of the anxiety people have about, traveling long distances, for instance. But at the end of the day, you got to make cars that people want. Yep. And so I think consumers are going to demand it. I think automakers will meet that challenge. And I'm optimistic that we're going to see, there's projections of, 19 million more EVs on the road by 2030. I think that trend line will continue. And I think electric powered SUVs and pickup trucks, there's real potential to meet the consumer where they are there. That's my 2 cents.
Well said. Lucas?
Yeah, Neil just kind of talked about everything we've been saying for the past year. I've been a little upset at the auto industry for a while. They made an R&D and design choice 20 years ago to no longer pursue energy efficiency and put more power into the same engine instead of energy efficiency. And I just don't get it. My $25,000 car has 200 horsepower and can accelerate hard above 90 miles an hour. Like, what for? What do I need that for to get from A to B and drive my car? Like I could really use 100 horsepower to get from A to B, and if I want to go to the track and have fun, I'll buy a car for that. I don't need that every day to get from A to B. I think it's kind of crazy, this obsession with power, and it's just snowballed and it's kept going. And I don't know why. We could have cars with 100, 120, 140 horsepower with awesome efficiency. You know, my father had a 85 Honda Civic that had more efficiency than the cars out now. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm sorry, I just wanted to vent about that. But
I think we're all saying the same thing in different parts. I mean, you know, don't worry about your F-150. I got a Pontiac G8 that's got a Corvette engine sitting in the driveway, but I love EVs too, and my next purchase will be an EV. So
but EVs are coming. I'm not worried about this. I'm not too concerned about this. We'll have a lot of EVs. We'll have very efficient transportation, and I'll be happy. So
fair enough. We'll just be smart, America. Okay, 2 more quick stories. Let's go to the Alaska one really quick.
Okay.
So this one I just like. Where did I find this one? This was TD World. Alaskan co-op optimizes hybrid microgrid system. This is just one of these feel-good stories by Clay Copeland, January 19th. But small town, 150 miles away from Anchorage, called Cordova. And effectively, they've created their own microgrid operated by an electric cooperative. It's an isolated community, and they're almost going to be a fully 100% renewable energy going forward. You know, honestly, I forgot to write notes when I wrote the story or when I read the story, but it's just one of these little feel-good stories about a mayor and a town emphasizing clean energy, emphasizing doing it themselves when resources weren't available to them, and getting the job done. That feels very Alaskan to me. It feels very frontier. It's great. They're using a lot of hydroelectric, and they're using a lot of storage. And the way they're getting to clean energy is putting a storage system in with their hydro. So, you know, these are examples of little situations that could really be used as an example. Different parts of the United States, different cities that may have not had resources available to them. With the cost of batteries going down, storage is going to make so many different solutions using clean energy possible.
I love this story, and I love Alaska. I had the opportunity to go out there pre-COVID in, I guess looking back on it, it was 2019, the late summer 2019. And what I loved about Alaska was that here was a state that was wholly dependent on energy production. Alaskans are keenly aware of the importance of oil and gas and energy to their state. Alaskans still get checks, to my understanding, you know, because of the significant production that takes place there. Yet it's also a gorgeous part of the planet. And Alaskans can both be simultaneously for energy production that benefits their communities and for protecting the environment and the gorgeous landscape that they have there. And I think that's really in the Alaskan ethos, that balance. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that a political leader in an Alaskan community would successfully take on something like this, because I think it's very much in line with the balance that Alaskans take when it comes to this. And it's not just limited to Alaska. I was in Wyoming and Montana actually this summer in the midst of COVID, because it was a place that I could go visit and be outdoors and still see energy infrastructure. And what you recognize, it was really cool. I visited a Northwestern battery facility in Yellowstone National Park. And in talking to the ranger of the park, what he explained to me was that there's demands from consumers and employees for reliable electricity in Yellowstone, but they won't tolerate transmission lines cutting across the park. Mm-hmm. And so how do you balance delivering that reliable, affordable energy without disturbing the spectacular landscape? And they found a way to do it with this microgrid battery system. And I think, again, it's another way that that innovation and the deployment of technologies will help us both continue to provide that durable, reliable, affordable energy while protecting not just the environment, but our beautiful physical surroundings.
Yep. Lucas?
Yeah, I was going to go to a totally different angle. I mean, this really and proves to me the power that mayors handle, hold, and the power that governors hold, right, and can wield. And I think Eric and I have talked about this before too. Bloomberg and his C40 and that idea of getting the mayors together, and that how much power they have over their towns and their jurisdictions is incredibly powerful. So I really like to see this. It's one of the reasons why I didn't freak out when Trump took office, because there's still a lot of power in the hands of the governors and the mayors to make the changes we want. And that's what they did. They said, well, the feds can do whatever they want. We're going to make the changes we have the authority to do. And that's where this stuff comes from. So I just love this story.
Yeah, same here. And maybe our next podcast will be from a remote location in Cordova, Alaska. I'd be happy to simulcast from there.
I'll see you there. Yeah, I'll be
Last
there.
story really quick. This is really more of a shout out story, but the Green Car Congress from January 21st, Department of Energy partners with hometown Youngstown State University and ORNL to support battery manufacturing workforce. This is fantastic. When Oak Ridge National Laboratories, Department of Energy is teaming up with a Rust Belt University, and I say Rust Belt with affection, YSU, who's been working very closely with the LG GM battery gigafactory going up in and around Youngstown. They're going to do an energy storage workforce innovation center, and it's going to serve as a training catalyst to take all that fantastic R&G jobs, which are typically considered white collar, and they're going to bring them down to a level where people who wouldn't have had access to such education will have access. And so that we're creating good blue collar jobs that pay a decent wage, and will also be a springboard for many of those people to move on in their careers to other more white collar type of jobs in clean energy. This is fantastic. Lucas, you're highlighting Voltage Valley, which is a new nickname given to the Youngstown area, which I love. This is fantastic stuff. And this is the power of the federal government being smart and efficient. So even though you're not with the DOE, Neil, I'm going to give you a big thank you on behalf of the citizens of the Rust Belt on this one.
Well, I love my folks in Ohio, and I love my friends at DOE. I want to give a shout out to Secretary Briette. He really focused on these areas, and there's a lot that he put in place that kind of went under the radar, and his stewardship of the labs and driving innovation. I went to NREL in July. No, actually, it was the fall. It was October, and it was just incredible to see the research that they're doing there, and then to think about combining their research with the market barrier removing efforts that we were taking at FERC. It was just amazing to think about what the future could hold. And so I want to commend Secretary Briette and the leadership at DOE for the work they've done that really will lay the groundwork for some exciting things in the future. And anything that's good for Northeast Ohio is good for me. And so I'm happy to see this.
Well, thank you for that. Honestly, it's been great having you, Neil. Just your candor and your very honest, transparent approach to our questions is something that's going to serve your future very well, but also our listening audience, because we looked at our numbers. We have a lot of younger people who are just entering their careers listening to our podcast. And so, your answers are a bit of a role model type of answers about how to propel yourself in your career, with dignity, honesty, and transparency. And we also learned a lot today, and that's very important.
Well, I appreciate it. Unfortunately for your younger listeners, I've got a face for radio and a voice for print. So I hope I didn't scare them away in the first 30 seconds. But if they hung in and listened, I hope they were both entertained and learned something out of it.
Thanks so much, Neil. It's been informative. It's been interesting. Cheers. We learned a lot.
Cheers to you. Cheers to us. Really quickly, we have to do this, of course. The views and opinions expressed by the Pirates are those of the Pirates and not necessarily those of any organization we are affiliated with.
And
where can people go to find us?
Yeah, and we are on YouTube. If you want to see our beautiful faces, you click the subscribe button, but then you also have to click the little alarm bell so you get the notifications when we post. We're also on your favorite podcast site. We're on about a dozen podcast sites, so you just search for Pirates of Clean Tech, and you click the follow button, and then you'll know when our podcasts are posted. They usually post about the same time.
And Neil, we're going to definitely take you up on your offer to have you on again. Maybe as we get closer to the end of your tenure in June, we'll get a little bit of update about, you can be a little bit reflective about where have you gone, where you're going next, and we'll drink some better quality beer.
It'd be an honor. Thank you.
Or some Kentucky bourbon. Yeah.
Or some Kentucky bourbon.
I'll do that. I will sign up for that.
Then I'll be really candid and transparent.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Eric Planey.
I'm Lucas Fico.
I'm Neil Chatterjee.
And together we are the Pirates of Clean Tech.
Yar.
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 Awesome.